All right. Well, thank you, Philip, once again for joining us for this discussion for To Your Eternity. This is for volumes 11 and 12.
Uh,
Perfect. I don't actually know that I made this unlisted.
oh,
Well, I guess we'll see if people start joining the chat.
if we start getting comments, we'll know.
Yeah, this might be a live stream. Um,
Okay.
anyway, thank you for joining me. If you're unaware, Philip and I are discussing this series back and forth on each other's channels. So the last one was on Philip's channel. This one is, I mean, I'm sure you know if you're joining us at this point. Philip, what did you think of these last two volumes that we read?
Yeah. Well, I hadn't been paying attention to the names of the various arcs and that sort of thing until we get to them. So I was surprised by how it felt like the end of a series. Like
Yeah, we came
suddenly
to an end, didn't we?
it just like, wait, what? This is it. It was, as far as many of the minor, I hesitate to use the word minor because they seem important, but characters other than Fushi and the Beholder, okay, they're gone, they're done, it's over. There's like this huge thing, had a big battle. It feels like the end of a what would often be the end of a series, or it's just a big battle, and then so and so doesn't make it, and so does, and then we get to the end, and then it's like, wait, we get to hear about the fates of all the different characters. They got old, they died, whatever, and it felt like the end to me. So I'm expecting kind of, okay, we're gonna have Fushi, we're gonna have the Beholder, but we're gonna be an entirely new era. Maybe Fushi will still have memories of some of these characters that we met along the way, but I feel like it's almost like the mangaka Yoshitoki Oima kind of, I don't know if this was planned this way or not, but it feels like this is a done story, and you could even stop here and be satisfied, I think. In some ways, there
In
are
some ways, yeah.
some elements that are going to continue, and I think most of it has to do with Fushi and the Beholder. But yeah, I was surprised at how much this felt like an ending. And there were certain moments that I really loved, and a couple that I really did not love.
Ooh, okay. I'm excited to get into it. Yeah, no, I agree. It did. It was the climax and then the falling action and the summary. Okay,
Yeah.
this is where everybody is now, as well as seeing what direction, what path Fushi ends up taking. It does feel, and it does end saying like this is the end of an era. Next, we're going to be in the next era. It's going to be a more modern age.
Yeah.
So, this is the end of Fushi's life at this point. So I think what we can do for this chat, because these two, first of all, how great are we at planning things without knowing anything that we ended here? Like, what if we split this up so that the next chat is the end of this era and then the beginning of the next? That was a wonderful coincidence.
It was just intuitive planning, Murphy. That's all.
I know. Oh, we're just amazing.
Native genius. Yes.
So for this chat, since it was very battle centric and very climaxy, I reckon we can talk about a couple of the beats that were kind of more meaningful to us, either positive or negative. Talk about it overall, and then maybe also talk about, okay, let's look at this whole era. What did we think of this first era? What were the themes? What was trying to be articulated? How did it do? And then maybe even looking forward, if you have any ideas for that as well. Does that sound all right?
Sounds awesome to me.
Okay, perfect. So we started off by bringing March back, which we saw that in the last one, but now here she is. She's physically here. She's left a handprint for Fushi to send him that note. And this is the beginning of Fushi kind of having to be confronted with this secret that's been kept from him by Bon.
Yeah. Yes, and I would love to start with Fushi as, of course, the central character and all of that, but also in terms of the themes we've been exploring in the series so far, and the idea of mortality being central to this whole narrative. And I was wondering how Yoshitoki Oima was going to deal with this notion that she had introduced, that Fushi can indeed resurrect essentially a person, that he can create a body, that soul, that spirit that's been hanging around, because we've learned that either a spirit can choose to go off,
Right.
to wherever, or it can hover around and remain if it's not satisfied. And yeah, so Fushi can bring back people, apparently. And I thought, okay, this has to have major consequences. This has to be a thing where, yeah, he can do it, but there's this, because most of the time when this sort of thing happens, somebody comes back from the dead, they're not the same, right? So I was wondering, what is the consequence going to be here? What is the, how is this going to be? And it's like, it becomes this thing in the middle of the battle where these three dudes, so you've got Hyro, Kai, and Messar. Not only does he resurrect them, but it gets to a point where they're like, yeah, I need to get to the other side of town. Can you just, and then Fushi makes a body for them and they go over to the other side of town. Like, they use it as a convenience almost.
Yeah, they do.
And I'm thinking, wait, this is weird. This is not right. Where's the negative of all this going to be? I think we got a bit of it at the end, but I wish there had been more of that, where there has to be a consequence to this. And I think the consequence is in the ending, where Fushi, eventually, his consciousness spreads so far that he ceases to be an individual, and he basically can't talk to people the way he used to. He can't interact with individuals on an individual level. And so it feels like he's in the world. He's all over the world. His roots are everywhere. So Fushi's still around, but he's really not, he's no longer an individual for quite a long time after the battle is over. And the people he's brought back can no longer then be resurrected, because he's not there to say, oh yes, I'll make you a new body, So they live their lives finally. And I think there's some pain in that. I think you see Messar becomes, he abuses substances. You see March was the most, talk about one moment that I really did not like was what happens with March, because basically a little girl is brought back who had died tragically and prematurely. And once again, she simply is given a tiny role, and then she dies. She takes her own life. Because
did she take her own life at the end?
Yeah, it's not shown, but basically there was this. It says she's at Fushi's feet, and he no longer speaks to her. He's gone. He's like, his consciousness is spread all over.
Was this not her?
I don't know who that is, but I'm pretty sure that it says, it's strongly implied that she takes her own life. It says euthanasia is the exact word.
Oh. Okay, well,
yeah. So I'll find the page, but she essentially, I believe, takes her life. Like, she's a warm presence at his feet, and then he says he doesn't even notice when that warm presence is taken away by euthanasia.
Okay.
In other words, I think March takes her own life. Out of despair, because she wanted to be mommy, and I thought that was the one moment that I did not like. But I did find it appropriate to see the various characters actually having to deal with their mortality. So you do see Tonari. I'm going to try to say it correct. Somebody on the previous video helped out with the pronunciation.
Oh, okay.
So I've been saying Tonari
I have too.
Apparently it's Tonari or something.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe I'm a little closer. But anyway, the emphasis is on the first syllable. But whatever. So we see her get old. We see also, I think, this kind of loneliness, because somebody like March, her life was 200 years ago. Everyone she knew is gone.
Right.
All she had to connect her to the world was Fushi. And so that despair makes sense in a way. So I do feel like we did finally get a kind of consequence to all of this reviving people and stuff. So anyway, that's kind of how I felt about that. I don't know what your thoughts are on all that.
I do have a different perspective on it. I think that resurrection and fake out deaths are tropes that I'm very vocally irritated by frequently in stories. And it's funny, Philip, that you mentioned that in stories, if there's resurrection, there's consequences.
Could be.
And I mean, I think maybe sometimes, maybe for Malazan and maybe for Pet Sematary and maybe for some of the series that stand out a lot to us, but I think
Yeah.
for many, many series, that's not the case.
Mm. Response.
Resurrection is something that just happens and then we move on, and that's a big gripe for me. Um, so I think part of it is I think that there's a lazy way to do it, which would be to have a death and then bring them back or say, just kidding, that was a lie, just for like cheap emotion that the author's trying to steal from the reader without actually committing. And that makes me mad. There are certain authors that I follow, like some of my most read authors do it all the time. And I think that it's cheap and I hate it. Um, but uh, I don't take it that way in this one,
Okay.
because in this one, it seems to be very, very intentional. It's not trying to get cheap emotion out of us.
Mm.
It's a decision that's been made deliberately by Fushi for the people, and then they live on. It's not a shock factor element. And I think you and I have been trained to say or to feel that the correct response is there should be a consequence because death shouldn't want to give up people so easily. Death should change someone. But I
Yeah.
think a lot of literature that sticks with us tries to help us process grief by showing death in that way. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only answer for this kind of scenario. So I
Mm.
think that this was done very intentionally and it was trying to say something. So it's not, even though it's not what I would have expected out of it, I can respect what it was doing. I think that there were a lot of consequences, just maybe not the ones that you and I are accustomed to seeing. Things like when immortality is introduced, especially from the perspective of Fushi, who's able to give people their mortality back. You might have someone who would take advantage of you and use you and almost capture you to the point where Fushi nearly broke
Mm.
because of how much he was giving. And Bond wasn't, and Fushi was alone. He was isolated and he was losing his very self. And Bond wasn't giving him something that would have given him joy.
Mm.
And when that final battle came, when everybody was fighting alongside, there was just so much more life to that when Fushi was fighting alongside his family instead of
Mhm.
having to continually fight alone. Um, Even with the three that became immortal, there was almost like a callousness and a lack of care towards death. It lost its gravity, it lost its sting,
Right.
and not only that, but then people could see Fushi just, shoot someone so that he could
Right.
um, re respawn. I can't think of the right term. and and people were horrified by it, and it further isolated him. It further pushed people away from him. It further dehumanized him. So I think that there were a lot of subtle ways that showed how introducing this into our culture would make someone even more rife for being used and make life even less significant and weighty. And then when they did choose to take their lives back and to live their lives on, there still was a bit of pain and regret because these people still wanted to live with Fushi and they still wanted to have a normal life with him. But because of this isolation, because of this burden on him, he was forced to continue to isolate himself,
Mhm. Mhm.
and it ended up being a sad ending for some of them. Like it affected March in a way that you've just told me is devastating, but that was because of the choices that Fushi made by bringing her back and then still having to hold her at arm's length. So it was a very long monologue to say
Yeah.
that while it's not what I would have chosen or expected, I do think that it did what it wanted to do, and I'm cool with it.
Okay. Yeah. Overall, I am too. Just to confirm, yeah, you do have. So March is very upset about the idea of eventually Fushi having to leave,
Yeah.
and says, we've finally been reunited, and now you're going to split up again. I can't leave you again. Mommy's not going to allow that. I'm staying with you. And she's obviously distraught here. Growing up without you isn't going to make me happy.
Right.
And then basically Fushi does what he feels he has to do, which is he disperses his consciousness all over the place, and he ceases to be, at least by outward appearance, an individual, right? So you see this very subtle panel here where that's March at his feet. March has been doing that the whole time. He doesn't wake up even if we shake him. So that's March is at his feet. And then I also wanted to put what Tonari says is being dead was better than this, is Tonari's little line there. But anyway, a little bit later, as Gugu is reminiscing with that one soldier guy, we do learn that indeed, as Fushi is silent, and Tonari is saying, I really understand how she feels. I understand the pain of moving forward while leaving all sorts of things behind.
Mm-hmm.
This is mortality. This is what we have to do when we're dealing with death. And then the narrator tells us, Fushi pressed on toward his goal. He aimed to cover the world, leaving the knockers with nowhere to go. He appeared to be sleeping, but that was not the case. He was simply concentrating so fully on his roots that all his body did was breathe. And then it says, the next page, he's spreading out all over the place, right? And this caption here, you can see her feet. That's all you see. Those are March's feet, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, so weak that he didn't notice the warmth at his feet vanish from a euthanasia drug. So,
From a euthanasia drug. Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's very clear.
yeah, unfortunately. So that upset me a lot.
Yeah.
I was not happy about that particular decision.
That is very sad. I think the question I have in regard to all that is, where was Perona?
So Perona.
Oh, she was taken. She was still with.
She was with Kahaku.
Mm-hmm.
So later, Kahaku does essentially kill himself in order to return those lives to Fushi.
Yes.
That's part of his motive. And he says, I love you, Fushi. And he cuts off his arm, finally able to take that knocker down with him, with a little bit of help from the Bennett Church, because I think he knew they were going to shove him into that molten iron.
Yeah, I think he needed help to be able to go that far, because he had considered dislodging the knocker from him before, and he was truly a slave to it. I mean, he had so little control over being able to actually remove the knocker from him.
That was actually one of my favorite moments, and I liked Kahaku's presence in this story because I feel like you really get conflict with this character, right? He's part knocker and he's part utterly devoted to Fushi, and those two things are having a very hard time living in one body. And so his end I found very compelling, actually, with the flashback to his childhood and him trying to live up to this whole legacy.
Yeah.
And the fact that, go ahead.
No, you finish your thought.
Oh, no, just, that he has to cut off his own arm. And by this point, the knocker has come to his face, which I thought was a good choice, actually, because it just shows how that sort of physical disfigurement is a metaphor in a way for what he's become and what he knows he is. And so, he has to cut off his own arm, and he kind of, you see him with a smile on his face and saying, I love you, Fushi.
I took it going to his face as because he did actually cut the knocker off of his arm, and then it went inside. I don't remember her name. Itty, yes. It started controlling Itty and affecting her, and then he invited the knocker back to him. So he no longer had that arm that it was attached to. And I took it as it trying to be even closer to him. So you can't cut me off again, buddy. In order to kill me, you kill yourself. And so it made it so that this was the only option for him if he was going to do this finally.
Yeah, which he did. And that returns, I guess you would have to say, Perona and the others that had been captured by that knocker, which leaves them free to either be, I guess, I don't see any indication that he resurrects any of them. So perhaps their spirits are free to just go wherever.
They might have chosen. I would assume that Perona would choose that if March had died.
Right.
then Perona would have chosen to move on with March.
And from volume 11, I think this is Kahoku's dream, where he's holding Paruna / Fushi, and they seem to be like a couple. So
that's the dream.
That's the dream.
So I think my most striking scene for Kahaku was when he killed the 3. When he was cooking for each of them, he had that butcher's knife, and then he was like, "Let's talk about how much of a disappointment you are." And he got so worked up, and then he finally just slaughtered them, and he came running downstairs, and his eyes were desperate, and he was like, "No, forgive me. I didn't mean. They attacked me. That must have been it. They must have attacked me. That must have." And then finally just asking for forgiveness. And Fushi, who was so exhausted and so drained and so tired of seeing death, just said, "Get along." And then Kahaku still couldn't control himself and then ended up near killing Fushi and taking all of his forms for a minute there.
Yeah. Well, he's down to the orb, right?
He was down to the orb. Yeah. That whole sequence with him where he completely lost control and was killing his allies and then killing the one that he was obsessed with was quite the display of how the Knocker was truly not just sometimes taking over control of his arm, but also getting into his very mind.
Yeah, I think that was inevitable. That the Knocker probably understood that eventually it would get to that point, and it had positioned itself within Kahaku in order for that moment to happen, because that is the mission of the Knockers. So I assume that was kind of a strategic decision to allow itself to be part of a vessel that was extremely devoted to Fushi, because that was going to be able to get close to Fushi.
I wonder. So there were many opportunities that Kahaku could have killed him before that because Fushi trusted him and allowed him close.
And
so
Fushi
I wonder.
Could have killed him too, by the way. Fushi could have killed that Knocker many times.
Fushi definitely could have. Yes. And I think that's one thing about Fushi is he's just not really willing to kill if he can help it. But I think Kahaku, I think that there has to be some sort of battle that was going on that we didn't see, that maybe the Knocker would have killed Fushi sooner if Kahaku didn't have such a strong will to resist, and he just got tired and it just got stronger and stronger to the point that he couldn't fight it anymore.
Yeah. Which, if we understand things correctly, that will came from his great whatever grandmother, Hayase, right?
No, I think the will. I'm sorry. The will to protect Fushi.
Yeah.
Yes, I do believe so. I thought you meant the desire to kill him. I was going to say, no, I think that was the Knocker the whole time.
Yeah.
Yes, I do believe so. It was at least her will to protect him and to keep track of him and potentially to have his baby, because multiple generations after were looking for that as well. So yeah, I think there was a lot wrapped up in that.
Which it makes me wonder, why do I see it as really creepy in her, but somehow I feel like it's a, I don't know if noble is the right word, but it feels like in Kahaku's case, he sacrifices himself ultimately. So I feel like he's kind of, I don't know. I mean, they're both obsessed, right? With Fushi.
It still feels creepy to me from Kahaku.
Yeah, I guess it is. I guess I'm looking back with a sense of his ultimate sacrifice does.
Yeah, it tents the action.
Redeems him a little bit.
It redeems him. I think he's just a complicated character that gets to be both, because there were times where I was like, oh, his affection is genuine. He just truly loves Fushi. But then there were other parts where I was like, this isn't love. This is obsession. This is concerning. So I don't know. Like, Hayase definitely was farther on that spectrum. I mean, she tried to rape him. So I don't think Kahaku ever would have done that.
She killed people that she basically felt that he was too close.
So did Kahaku.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. So.
I think that Hayase was further on the side of just like, oh my goodness, but I don't view him as this pure innocent love.
Oh no. That's what makes him interesting, honestly.
Yes, I agree.
Interesting characters in the series.
He's a very complicated one
because of his conflict.
because of
Um,
his conflict. Yes, absolutely. Speaking of conflict, actually, Fushi had some interesting conflicts where, for instance, where he found the thief on the street
yeah.
and showed him mercy, and then turned around and found a family that had been attacked.
So wasn't that Hyro who did that? Who found the thief and decided, okay, just go on your way? Was it Hyro? Who it was one of the three, I thought, who found that thief,
I don't think so.
spared
This
his
is it,
life.
right?
Was that Fushi? Um, I don't. Yeah, I can't tell from
Yeah,
that
it's hard to
page.
decipher. Sorry.
Not,
Um, maybe I'm
maybe.
wrong.
I think we just said maybe you're right at the same time. So, but yeah, no, you're right. Whoever did it, there's a lot of conflict in this within this greater conflict, which I
Yes.
thought was another thing that was really well done.
Mhm.
That Fushi has to make decisions, and he keeps trying to do everything, and it results in him, of course, losing consciousness at a certain point, and then they get really hammered by the knockers for a while, and they lose a lot, and it becomes a very desperate situation. At first I
Mhm.
thought, oh, so the good guys are this is gonna work out fine, but no, yeah, Fushi
Yeah.
just pushed himself so far
And the
that
battle rages on for so long.
yeah, it was attrition. It was a sort of a battle of attrition.
Mhm.
That the knockers, I mean, are there knockers still? Are they all gone now, or were they all wiped out by this?
I got the impression that there are, just because he said that he had to stay and protect and
Hmm.
continue to do this.
Yeah,
But
because that's why he's spreading his consciousness all over the place to try to hunt
right.
down all the rest of them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I took it, or try to, like, suppress them and keep them at bay. I could be wrong, though.
Yeah. Well, another favorite moment for me, and you mentioned that scene where Kahoku kills or destroys all these, or absorbs through the knocker all these different forms of Fushi, and he's brought down to, oh my
That's after
goodness,
he murdered them and he's covered in blood. Ugh. Sorry,
uh,
go ahead.
yeah. No, that's compelling stuff. But ultimately, Fushi is reduced to the orb again.
Mhm.
And another favorite moment for me, and this is a Bond scene,
Yes, I
right? Like
know. Go.
Bond
Yeah, go.
stabs himself
Oh, because it's the only thing
and
you can think of.
bleeds all over the orb and says, "Okay, Fushi, this is the only way we're going to be able to. I'm going to give you a new form. It's going to be me." And he gives him his power, which is crucial because
Crucial.
combining Fushi's power to regenerate and make new forms and etc. with Bond's power to see the spirits. That's the crucial thing that allows, I think, the victory to happen ultimately.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, because then he was able to return all those lives, and he
Yeah,
was finally able to confront the fact that he can bring his friends back to life so they could stand next to him. How
yeah.
sweet was it that the 2 spirits that fell upon around got their lives back and they were able to rush into battle too? I loved that. But Bond finally allowed Fushi in on this secret and sacrificed himself, sacrificed his own desires and his own wants
Yeah.
so that he could help his people. Finally, Bond.
And I also love that when he comes back as a ghost, he comes back in his more flamboyant.
In his Pompadump
Yeah,
outfit.
yeah. Because
Pompadour, that's what I was trying to say.
that's who he is, you know. That's I think a
Oh,
true
that's the
version.
true Bond.
Yeah, yeah. And it helps to keep them apart too, because Fushi has his more, I guess, current form,
Ugh.
but he comes back with the full outfit. And yeah, that's a kind of a nice little moment too, where you see all the hands converge here and all of that. So yeah, but that was a great moment, I felt, and something that was kind of brilliant storytelling too, to have
Yeah.
those two things combine. And yeah, there it is. There's the scene where he
Mhm.
takes his own life and puts in the blood splatters on the orb, and
Mhm. And it was a risk too. He didn't even know if it was gonna work. It was just the only
yeah,
thing he could think of to help him be able to fight and be able to get those forms back. It was such a good scene for Bond. I mean, I feel like we saw him in the cage sacrifice himself, but I've been waiting for this part of it, this bit that he's been holding back, and it was well done. It was well worth the wait, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
also love after the battle, after the big conflict, which we've talked about. I love when they're all together and they're eating a meal together, and you've got Gugu on one side, and you have
Yeah.
Fushi on the other, and they're like, "We cooked together just like the old days. We made this feast. We're a family," and it was so sweet.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely was. Yeah, there were some endearing moments in here, and
Hmm.
some real peril there in the battle where the knockers were coming up with these various ways of invading, coming in those like little like cannonballs that they're filled with knockers and then creeping all over the place. And so yeah, good stuff. Yeah,
Very good stuff.
this was so cute. Yeah, this hugging scene here when
It
they
really was.
Tonari and they're here, they're really here. And there they all are.
So, okay. Who do you think this girl was at the end then that I thought was March?
Okay, so let's figure that out. Oh, and one other question before we figure that out, and this is just a me being nitpicky kind of thing. So we know that Pioran is the horse, right?
Yes.
So her Phi or her spirit or whatever is in that horse.
Yes.
How is it then that Fushi is able to turn into Pioran at various
Okay.
points?
So, this is the way I take it.
Okay.
Because what the cloaked man said, the beholder said to her was, if you do reincarnate, then your memories, who you were, your presence is no longer. It ends and you will be a whole new being.
Yeah.
You'll just be able to live on as a whole new being to serve Fushi if that's what you want. So Pjorn is done. Pjorn was her own entity and she halted. It's not like she changed bodies.
Okay.
So that's why he can be her. That's how I took it.
Okay. I'll buy that. Also, by the way, Parona, remember the knocker that takes her form and is shooting people? The soldiers?
Yeah, that
Um,
was one of the most striking, horrifying images in the whole
Yeah,
volume.
because you think that one soldier is going to make it, and then she gets shot in the back, and you
Mhm.
realize, oh no, it's Knocker Parona. Yeah, that's creepy. Yeah. So that one gets roasted by Gugu. And I think at that point, Fushi gets that form back, the Parona form, if I'm reading that correctly, because then there she is right after that. So yeah.
And that was after March's death?
No, it's before, I think. So yeah, you would think that there would be a reunion.
Okay. So that's what I was asking before. I thought
Yeah.
it was that order that they got the form back
Yeah.
because okay, I don't know.
You're
Maybe I'm
actually,
missing something. It just seems to me that Perona wouldn't have moved on without March.
and that March wouldn't have taken her own life if Parona was
Yeah,
around.
Perona was around. She would have had something to live for. I mean, granted, she took Fushi on as her child in her mind, but I mean, Perona also played that role, and I don't know.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so who is that girl? Let's try to figure that out.
Who's that girl? That's the question.
Who's that girl? Let's see. Isn't that a song by Madonna or something? Who's that girl?
I don't have any idea.
Oh, you're too young. So anyway, who is this at the end? Ugh.
My guess was March. That was wrong. So your turn to guess.
I don't think it's March. Yeah, so we have all these goodbyes at the end,
Mhm.
including Bon, who lovely to see. He had his life and he married his sweetheart and adopted the one kid who's an adult now and has his own kid, whatever, Chabo, right? And so that's all nice. And everybody has some had, died a little earlier. Others did okay, like Bon. But for the most part, you do have this, people live their lives kind of thing. And we get that wrap up. And then, thank you all. I won't forget your faces. That's Fushi. And then we get this. This is like a modern city with like electric lines and all kinds of stuff.
Oh,
So
so that definitely isn't March then because it shows the modern city before it introduces the girl.
exactly. So what
So
I'm
the
thinking.
girl okay, sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah.
The girl is either gonna be Fushi's companion in the next volume, or that's Fushi's new form.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good call. I was thinking companion, but you're right. She also could be Fushi's new form. All it says is senpai, senpai, Mizuha senpai. I don't know what that means. I assume that she's addressing a person. It looks like she is some kind of a upper class person because the person who's speaking to her says, "You forgot this," and it kind of bows to her. So it looks like a servant almost. "You forgot this. Oh, thank you," and puts in her hair tie, saying it's one of my favorites, and it's got a feather in it.
Mhm.
And I was wondering what the significance of the feather is, if anything. But then she just turns and says bye, and that's all we get.
Yeah.
That's it. So I have no idea who she is.
She looks to be potentially in a schoolgirl uniform.
I believe that is a schoolgirl uniform. Yes. And
Well,
she
we'll
has,
just have to read volume 13 to see.
yeah, I think it's a read and find out kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. So, looking back, era 1, what did you think? Themes, execution, story, how are you feeling?
Themes, I think, is a highlight for me. I like the exploration of mortality. I took me a while to adjust to the fact that these characters I was meeting are going to be probably ephemeral, which is that's a sign of probably good storytelling. If I feel attached enough to the characters to be upset when they're gone, then I think the storyteller has done her job. Um, and I like the that more abstract philosophical exploration that's going on between Fushi and the beholder. I'm not entirely satisfied because I don't know who the beholder really is yet, and I still
Or
don't
the
trust.
intentions or
Yeah,
anything, really?
yeah. So I'm assuming that's the thing that's going to be fleshed out maybe in the future volumes. We'll see. But as far as themes go, big thumbs up. I think character work also I would say successful. There are certain moments though that still, and I think this is a me thing more than anything because of I guess I'm just not used to the way the storytelling goes in the more the sort of younger youth oriented manga, whatever it's called, shonen.
Shonen.
Yeah, okay. So there are certain aspects of that jar me a little bit. Some of it sometimes it's a bit abrupt. Or sometimes suddenly a character just starts being goofy, and I'm like, oh,
I feel like there was a lot of that in
what's
Vagabond.
wrong with this person? Yeah.
Was there not abrupt stuff in Vagabond though, where people would just like kind of act goofy or strange or different, or abrupt storytelling shifts?
I never felt like I had to go reread pages to figure out what was going on.
This manga was more confusing than others that we've read. I will concede that for sure.
Yeah. I had to repeatedly go back and reread and then try to, and not unsuccessfully sometimes, figure out until we started talking and you helped me out, or a viewer would say, actually, this is what was going on there. So
Right.
that had not happened before. And I was just assuming that this is a more of a, just the storytelling style. Is it unique to this particular series, or is it a thing in shonen? I don't know because this is my first one, but
I think it's unique to the series because I read a lot of shonen, and this was there were very confusing moments in the way that it was written that I was like, what exactly is happening?
yeah,
So
it was
I think it's the
hitchy.
series.
I feel like it was hitchy.
It was hitchy. I'll agree with that.
Yeah. So plot wise, there were a lot of gaps. It was hitchy, and I started to appreciate the big leaps in time a little more because I thought, okay, we're doing, as I said to you once, we're kind of zooming out here. And the real dialogue, the real exploration is Fushi and the Beholder and whatever it is the knockers represent. And I'm not convinced the knockers are completely evil yet either. So
I'm
but,
starting to lean towards evil.
yeah.
Yeah, I am. I think the at least the characters think that they are for sure. They were
Yeah, from
calling
a human perspective, yes, they're evil because they want to end our lives. They want
against our will.
Now they feel what they're doing is eliminating suffering, which is different than evil, I think, or maybe not. I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like if I want to eliminate suffering against your will, if I want to take away your autonomy, right? Like
Yeah,
if you tell me I had this medical diagnosis and then I was like, okay. Like, would that be kind? Would I be loving you or would I I don't know.
You
I
know what?
don't
So the answer might depend on what comes after. You know, if
Cool.
this is it, this is all I got, then I would probably not appreciate your efforts to
I
alleviate
just
my
feel like
suffering.
you deserve that choice. That should be up to you. I shouldn't take that from you.
Oh yeah. I agree, and that's where Fushi's coming from. You know, that's why.
Right.
Yeah, that's why we love Fushi.
Yeah,
So I'm just
so
trying to understand. Yeah.
they have this desire to take our lives without our consent,
Yeah.
um, for the sake of ending suffering, supposedly. And Fushi has the ability to return that. He has the ability to cancel out what
Yeah.
they're doing and return people's lives back to them. So I
Yes.
do think that he's the hero in opposition to badness in this story.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, fair enough. Yeah. I just think that there's an attempt at some complexity with the knocker.
Oh yeah.
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 We've not gotten a lot of knocker perspective here, except for the one in Kahuku's arm.
Which was actively killing people against Kahaku's will. So, just generally it's not going so well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm not going to start a knocker fan club right now. Did that just sound really wrong?
No, it's fine. Everything's fine. It can mean two things.
I just thought about how that sounded after I said it.
Comment section on this one will be fun.
Oops. Yeah.
So anyway, no, I think my thoughts are very similar. I think that there were a lot of scenes that seemed like they could have been written in a more clear way.
Right.
I do at the end of Era 1, which this isn't a separate series, it's the same series, so keep in perspective, but we've closed an Era, and I don't feel satisfied with the knowledge that I have on the Beholder specifically.
Agreed.
On his plans, on where Fushi is going and what he's intending to do, what his goal is. So I look into the future and I don't feel excited. I don't feel bad about the future. I just don't feel excited because I feel like I just still don't hold very many puzzle pieces in my hand. And I would rather still mysteries, of course, to be unveiled, but I would rather be able to look forward and not just see a blank slate.
Yeah, I think the big picture stuff is still a mystery right now. Most of it is anyway. And I'll be curious to see what Fushi is like, because we saw this expanded, version of Fushi, which is much more of a dissipated entity, right? That is trying to be a benevolent force in the world, but doesn't have that individual voice any longer.
Mm-hmm.
So how does Fushi get that back? I assume Fushi's going to be more like a relatable character, an individual. When we meet Fushi again, maybe the modern era begins when somebody awakens Fushi. I don't know.
We shall see.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Volume 13 to come. So do you know how many volumes are out just now?
I want to say, I'm probably dead wrong, but I want to say 18 or something.
Okay, I was thinking that it was 20.
It could be, yeah. 20.
So we will have this done. Okay, it says 20.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what Google really quickly told me. So we will have this done by the end of the year, or at least caught up by the end of the year. But yeah, I'm excited to see what comes next.
Yeah, and it's not a finished series yet either.
No.
Yes. So, yeah.
But we're close, I think. We
have a couple series. Well, no, we have to circle back to Vinland Saga when the next volume comes out, I think.
Yes.
Right? And we'll have to do maybe the same for this one. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. But I am intrigued enough to want to tackle 13. I almost just picked it up to see what the heck is going to happen next.
No!
Yeah. I didn't do
Don't
it.
do that. Don't be that kind of friend.
I didn't. I resisted temptation.
Good.
I wasn't being a knocker. So, yeah.
Great. Or Kahaku. Okay, good. Well, thank you all for joining us for this chat for volumes 11 and 12. We'll see you next week on Philip's channel for 13 and 14.
Yeah.
And so his link is in the description. Be sure to follow that if you haven't already, and we will see you again next time. Bye.
Bye, everybody.